Pastor Emeka sat alone on the cracked wooden bench inside his small church. The sun was setting outside, but the room stayed quiet and empty. No people came today. No prayers, no songs, no healing. Just the sound of the wind blowing through the broken window. He looked at the few old chairs and the faded cross on the wall. He had dreamed of a big church, full of people praising God, but now it was just silence. Every day, he prayed harder. Every day, he waited for someone to show up. But no one came. Emeka's heart was heavy with frustration. He wondered if God had forgotten him. Maybe his calling was a lie. Maybe all this was wasted time. One night, after crying alone in his small room, he heard a quiet, cold voice inside his head, promising power and a church full of followers. But there was a price. Emeka shook his head. He was tired, desperate. Maybe this was the only way. Emeka hadn't seen Pastor Chuka in over 2 years. They used to pray together back in Bible school, but now Chuka was different. His church was booming. He drove a Lexus, wore gold watches, and lived in a house with gates taller than most buildings. Emeka waited in the fancy sitting room with leather chairs and cold air from a silent AC. Everything smelled like success. Chuka walked in with a smile too big for his face. "Emeka," he shouted, hugging him tightly. "You finally came." Emeka didn't smile. "Chuka, I came because I'm tired. I've prayed. I've fasted. I've shouted at the sky, and still, no members, no growth. I'm not asking for money. I just want to know, how did you do it?" Chuka paused, then sat down. He dropped his smile. "Are you sure you want to know?" Emeka nodded. "Yes. I'm ready." Chuka looked him straight in the eye. "Then meet me tonight. Don't tell anyone. Come alone. Wear black." That night, they drove for almost 2 hours. The road got narrower, darker. No street lights. No houses. Just bush. They stopped in front of a small hut. No windows. No sounds. Just a red cloth tied around the door. Chuka knocked 3 times. A deep voice answered from inside. "Bring him in." Emeka stepped inside and felt the air change. Cold. Heavy. Something sat in the dark corner, an old man, naked from the waist up, with white chalk all over his skin. His eyes were pale, not blind, just empty. He looked at Emeka. "You want power?" Emeka tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. He nodded. The man smiled, showing brown teeth. "Power has a price. I will give you a growing church, signs, wonders, crowds. But when the time comes, you will give me something precious." Emeka looked at Chuka. Chuka simply said, "I gave mine. Now it's your turn." "What did you give?" Emeka asked. Chuka stood silent for a second too long. The old man spoke instead. He gave his younger sister's womb. She has been mad since then. Emeka froze. "I don't have a sister," he said. "Then you will have a wife soon," the old man said. "And when the time is right, you will offer her womb." Silence filled the room. Emeka should have walked away. But he stayed. The church started growing slowly after Emeka's night visit to the native doctor. A few strangers began walking in during Sunday service. One woman said she felt pushed to stop her boss when she saw the small signboard outside. Another man said he had a voice tell him, "Enter this church now." Emeka didn't smile much, but inside, he knew the deal had started working. A month later, he met Edeora. She came to his church on a rainy Thursday evening, asking if she could join the choir. She had soft eyes, a quiet voice, and a smile that made people come. After service, she stayed behind to mop the wet floor. That night, Emeka looked at her differently, not as a church worker, but as the wife he needed to complete the sacrifice. 6 months later, they got married. Small wedding. Few guests. Emeka said he wanted to keep it humble. But the truth was, he didn't want too many eyes watching. Edeora loved him deeply. She cooked. She prayed. She stayed up with him at night to fast and believe for church growth. She thought she was helping build a holy life. One morning, 3 weeks into their marriage, Emeka saw it, her used pad in the bathroom trash. He picked it up with shaking hands and wrapped it in black nylon. That night, when Edeora was fast asleep, he left the house. The native doctor was waiting. "You have brought it," the man said, smelling the air as Emeka entered. "Her blood. Her body's gate." He took the pad, dropped it into a burning pot, and whispered words in a strange tongue. A loud wail filled the hut, but Emeka couldn't tell if it was human or not. "It is done," the native doctor said. "Your church will overflow. But from this night, her womb is mine. She will bleed, but never carry life." Emeka left without a word. Something inside him had died, but he buried it under ambition. 3 Sundays later, the church was full. A man in a wheelchair stood up during worship and walked. A barren woman screamed that she felt fire in her belly and saw a baby in a vision. People rushed in with testimonies. Everyone said, "Pastor Emeka carries real power." But Edeora started changing. She grew weak. Her periods came twice a month and lasted 7 to 10 days. She went to the hospital, but the test said nothing was wrong. She cried in the bathroom one night. "I think something is wrong with me," she told Emeka. He held her, kissed her forehead, and said, "Maybe it's just stress. Let's keep praying." But deep down, he knew. He had offered her womb. And the gods had accepted. By the end of the year, people stopped calling him Pastor Emeka. Now it was Daddy, Papa, Man of God. His church changed names too, from Mountain of Grace to the City of Fire. The banner outside was new, big, with his smiling face and a glowing white dove behind him. They came from far, from other states, from other countries. They came with wheelchairs, with hospital reports, with hopeless tears. And somehow, he always had a solution. It started small. A woman with a twisted arm came out for prayers. Emeka touched her shoulder. She screamed. The arm straightened. Then a man with full-blown stroke walked unaided to the altar. People fainted during worship. A woman claimed she saw angels in the ceiling fan. Others said they saw Jesus standing beside Emeka. What they didn't know was that every night before these miracles, Emeka returned to the native doctor. Each time, he brought something, hair from his wife's comb, fingernail clippings, even her bath water once. The man would burn or bury it, and say the same words, "Your fire will grow." And it did. Money began to pour in. People gave cars as offerings. Someone once dropped a land document on the altar by faith. Emeka's account balance became a mountain of zeros. So, he gave back, but not out of kindness. He opened a charity, God's Hands Foundation. They fed orphans once a week, gave scholarships to poor students, paid medical bills for sick children in the church. The newspapers started writing about him. TV stations invited him. One headline read, "The pastor who prays and pays." Even politicians came around. A governor once knelt before him during service. Emeka laid hands on him and whispered, "You'll win your second term." He did. At home, Edeora smiled a lot. She cooked his favorite meals. She proudly told anyone who asked, "My husband is not just a pastor, he's a helper of nations." But her health was still shaking. She now had monthly infections, painful periods, sleepless nights. The doctor still said, "She's fine." So she smiled through the pain. She didn't know her body was bleeding for the world's miracles. Meanwhile, Emeka's nights were no longer peaceful. The native doctor started showing up in his dreams. Sometimes he just stared with empty eyes. Other nights, he said, "It's almost time to bring more." But Emeka would wake up, wipe his sweat, and say, "Not now." Because for now, he was a god in the eyes of men. And that was all that mattered. The invitation came in a gold-lined envelope, hand-delivered by a nervous young man in a suit. National Crusade, Healing Nigeria. It was the biggest Christian gathering in the country, broadcast live on 4 TV stations, streamed online to the world. Millions would watch. Emeka was to speak on the second night, the night of healing and miracles. At first, he was proud. Then he panicked. What if nothing happened? What if the crowd stayed quiet? What if the people he fooled every week finally saw he was just a man? He went to the native doctor that same night. "I need more fire," Emeka said. The old man's eyes were already waiting. "You've taken her womb. Now, you must take her dreams." Emeka frowned. "What does that mean?" "You will stop her joy, her brightness, her light. What you love about her must die." There was silence. Then the native doctor handed him a small black jar. "Put this under your bed. For 7 nights. What will happen? She will become weaker. But your voice will be louder. You will call the blind, and they will see." Emeka did as told. Each night, Edeora grew more tired. She stopped singing in the choir. Stop talking as much. Sometimes, she just sat and stared out the window like she was trying to remember something she had forgotten. On the 7th day, she fainted in the kitchen. The doctor said it was stress. Emeka took her hand and whispered, "You'll be fine. The devil is just trying to fight your joy." She smiled weakly. "Maybe I need to rest more." But even in her tired state, she still cooked him food, still laid hands on him in prayer before his crusade. She didn't know her light was being stolen by the man she prayed for. The night of the crusade, the stadium was full. People overflowed outside, watching from screens. Drones flew overhead. Media trucks lined the streets. When Pastor Emeka stepped up to the pulpit, the crowd roared like thunder. He wiped his face with a white handkerchief and said only one word, "Fire." A man in the crowd screamed and dropped his crutches. A woman cried out that her deaf son was now hearing. Another woman ran to the stage, shouting, "My tumor just vanished." The crowd went mad. Camera flashes, news reporters, pastors from other churches stretched their hands toward him as if to pull power through the air. Everyone believed. Later that night, in a 5-star hotel room paid for by the organizers, Emeka sat alone. The glory had passed. The room was quiet again. He looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His eyes were sunken. His skin looked pale. He touched his chest. There was no joy, just hunger. He suddenly remembered what the native doctor said years ago. "You will grow, but never be full." Meanwhile, back at home, Eudora lay in bed, eyes open but blank. She had stopped bleeding. But something deeper was now broken. Eudora had stopped asking questions. She just moved through the house like someone who forgot where they were going. Her food burned on the gas cooker twice in 1 week. She once poured salt into the tea instead of sugar. When Emeka noticed her walking into the wall one morning, he asked, "Are you okay?" She smiled. "I'm just tired." But her eyes were not smiling. Meanwhile, in the church, one of the workers was watching everything closely. Her name was Sister Kem. She was one of the first people to join the church when it was still small. She cleaned the chairs, opened the gates early, and prayed all night during vigils. She believed in Emeka with her whole heart, till she started seeing things that didn't make sense. It started with the new choir girl, Blessing. She joined 2 months ago, and one evening after rehearsal, she confessed something to Nkem in a whisper. "Sister, please. I don't want to lead worship again. The last time Pastor Emeka laid hands on me, I had a dream where I was drowning in blood. It happened 2 nights in a row." Kem thought it was stress. Until another worker, the usher who handled offerings, came to her with a story too. "I counted 3 envelopes with the same handwriting and same amount inside. N200,000. I asked the man who dropped it. He said he was giving for the first time. But the handwriting looked feminine. That same week, the cleaner found burnt candles and a strange red cloth behind the baptism pool. Nobody knew who put it there. Sister Kem started to pray. Deep, long prayers. Midnight prayers. "God, show me what's hiding in this church." And slowly, she started hearing whispers. Not from people, but from her spirit. One night, she had a dream. She saw Eudora, standing in a long white gown, holding a baby that kept fading in her arms. Behind her stood Pastor Emeka, smiling at the crowd. But his shadow was not human. It had horns. And its mouth was open wide like it was laughing without sound. When Kem woke up, she was sweating. She wrote it down. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. At the same time, Emeka was noticing something else. The miracles were becoming harder to control. One Sunday, he tried to heal a boy with a broken leg. He poured oil. He shouted. The boy cried louder, the pain doubled. His mother screamed at Emeka before the ushers dragged her away. Another night during vigil, 3 women fainted during prayer. They weren't slain in the spirit, they were choking. One had foam in her mouth. After service, Emeka sat alone in his office and said quietly, "What's happening?" That same week, the native doctor sent a message. A small boy appeared at the gate with a note inside a red envelope. "It is time. Bring something deeper, or all will scatter." Emeka tore the note and burned it. But his hands wouldn't stop shaking. And still, Eudora kept fading. One morning, she looked at her reflection and whispered, "I feel like something is draining me." She didn't see Kem watching from behind the curtain. She didn't hear Kem whisper, "God, what is this man hiding?" Sister Kem couldn't sleep. Her heart was heavy with questions no one wanted to ask. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adora's pale face and the strange shadow in her dream. One morning, after cleaning the altar, Nkem quietly approached a trusted older woman in the church. "Mama, something is wrong with Pastor Emeka. I don't know what, but I'm scared." Mama Faith held her hand and whispered, "Child, some things are better left alone. But if your spirit says trouble, listen." That night, Nkem decided to follow Emeka after service. She kept a safe distance as he slipped out of the church compound, heading towards the small town outskirts. Emeka walked into a dim hut surrounded by red cloths and bones hanging from the ceiling. The native doctor was waiting. Without greeting, the doctor said, "You are late. Time is sleeping." Emeka dropped a small bundle on the table, a lock of Adora's hair and a torn piece of her blouse. The doctor looked at it and smiled, but it was a cruel smile. "You want more power, but the price is heavier now." He leaned close and whispered, "You must sacrifice blood itself, fresh blood." "Her blood." Emeka's mind raced. "Do you mean?" The native doctor nodded slowly. "Her life. It is the only way the fire will not die." Emeka looked away, sweat running down his face. Back in town, Sister Nkem watched from the shadows as Emeka left the hut, holding something small wrapped in cloth. She wanted to call out, to stop him, but fear froze her feet. She made a promise to herself. She would find a way to save Adora and expose the secret before it was too late. Meanwhile, Emeka returned home. Adora was sleeping, pale and quiet. He stood by her bedside, staring at her face. "Forgive me," he whispered. His hand trembled as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small knife. Sister Nkem knew she couldn't wait any longer. She began quietly asking questions, not directly about Emeka, but about the strange things happening in the church. One morning, she met Blessing, the choir girl who had the bad dreams. "Blessing, what else do you remember about those dreams?" Nkem asked softly. Blessing looked scared. There wasn't a woman crying, and a man watching, but his face was shadowed. "I hear whispers even during the day." Nkem's heart pounded. She wrote everything down in a small notebook. She also started paying attention to the strange patterns with offerings. One Sunday, she secretly followed the usher who counted the money. He met a mysterious woman outside the church, handed her a thick envelope, then disappeared quickly. Nkem managed to snap a photo with her phone before they noticed her. At the same time, Emeka was struggling. The sacrifice demanded more and more. Adora was getting weaker every day, but he couldn't stop. The native doctor warned him again, "If you don't give now, your fire will burn out, and your enemies will rise." Emeka felt trapped in a cage made by his own hands. One night, Sister Nkem finally got a break. She found a church volunteer who overheard a whispered conversation between Emeka and the native doctor. "The womb has given birth to power," Emeka said. "But it thirsts for more blood," the doctor replied. Nkem took a deep breath. This was the proof she needed. But exposing a powerful man like Emeka wasn't easy. Nkem planned carefully. She made secret recordings during church meetings, collected photos, and started contacting a journalist she trusted. Meanwhile, Emeka's world was falling apart. Adora collapsed during a Sunday service. The crowd panicked. Doctors rushed to help, but Emeka knew the truth. His price was almost paid. Sister Nkem held her phone tight as she watched the news alert. Investigation: Miracle Pastor accused of dark rituals. The headline sent a chill through her. She tapped play. On the screen was the journalist she'd contacted, showing Nkem's recordings of Emeka whispering with the native doctor. The video zoomed in on the black jar, the knife, and the torn blouse. She swallowed hard and remembered the day she took the secret photos of the offerings and the red cloth behind the baptism pool. Sunday morning service was packed, more than ever, but this time from curiosity, not faith. Emeka stepped onto the platform, arms raised. He opened his mouth to speak, but the screens around the church lit up. A live news feed played the expose. Gasps echoed through the hall. Ushers rushed to cover the screens, but too late. The video had reached every corner. Some people fell to their knees in shock. Others ran out screaming. A few stood frozen, tears streaming. Emeka's face went pale. He tried to calm the crowd. "Brothers, sisters, this is a lie." But his voice cracked. At the back, Mama Faith shouted, "Show us the truth, Lord." Outside, reporters jostled. Footage of Adora's collapse was shown, her weak arms held by doctors. Emeka fled the pulpit and raced into his office. He slammed the door and pounded on the wood. "Why now?" he screamed at the empty room. He picked up his phone and saw dozens of missed calls. Family members, politicians, church leaders. Then, a final message: we are coming for you. Outside, Sister Nkem stepped forward. Her heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. She had done the right thing. She walked into the empty sanctuary. Broken chairs lay on the floor. Candles burned out. The red cloth and burnt candles behind the baptism pool were still there, silent witnesses. She whispered, "This house was never built on rock." Emeka was gone by the time the police arrived. They sealed the church and started questioning staff. In his bedroom, they found the black jar. Inside, traces of blood and a note in shaky handwriting. More fire, more blood. They also found Adeora's pad wrapper, buried in the backyard. The sun was setting as Emeka ran down a dark road, suitcase in hand. He glanced behind, no headlights, no sirens yet. But he knew it wouldn't be long. He slowed to a stop and looked at the night sky. For the first time since the first deal, he felt fear. The fire was turning on him. Emeka's footsteps echoed on the empty highway as dawn crept in. His phone buzzed. A message flashed. "We know where you are. Surrender now." He swallowed hard. No more running. Back in town, the police were already searching. Inside the church, Sister Nkem waited nervously, her hands trembling. "Please," she whispered, "let this end." Hours later, Emeka was found hiding in a rundown motel on the edge of town. The officers moved in silently. He didn't resist. When they cuffed him, his eyes finally looked empty, no fire left. At the police station, Emeka faced the questions he had long ignored. His lies, his dark deals, the sacrifice of Adeora's womb, the secret rituals. He tried to explain, but his voice was weak. The truth spilled out like poison. The power was never his. It was stolen at a terrible cost. Meanwhile, Adeora was in a hospital bed, surrounded by the quiet prayers of the church members who stayed. Her health was fragile, but she was alive. Sister Nkem held her hand. "God saved you," she said softly. Adeora smiled faintly, but her eyes held 1,000 silent sorrows. News spread quickly. People stopped worshipping at the church. Many felt betrayed, but others found hope in the courage of those who spoke out. The church building stood empty, scarred by secrets. Emeka was charged with fraud, abuse, and worse. As he sat in a cold cell, the fire inside him finally died. Outside, the sun rose higher. A new day for the town. A new chance to rebuild, without lies, without shadows. The story of Pastor Emeka became a warning. That power stolen with sacrifice only destroys.